Hi, Porter County. It's Amanda from the South Haven branch and sometimes the Hebron and Portage branches when it comes to coffee and canvas. And I'm here with another version of coffee and canvas. Today we're going to be doing this butterfly painting that's behind me on the wall here. And it's actually quite handy that I'm literally sitting in front of a bunch of butterflies. So this is the painting that we're going to do today. It's kind of an abstract monarch butterfly painting. It's a lot easier than you think it was. It made me a little bit nervous when I first saw it thinking I couldn't do it, but it turns out it's really, really easy to do. So grab your coffee, grab some canvas and some painting supplies, and let's get ready to paint. Okay, let's get started with our coffee and canvas. So here's our painting that we're going to do. You're going to need a canvas or a piece of poster board, something to paint on, whatever you decide you want to paint on. The colors that we're going to use orange, red, yellow, black, and white. You'll need more orange than anything else, and just a little bit of black and white, and kind of a medium amount of the red and the yellow, because we're going to kind of be blending a little bit. So I've got my colors here. And so this is the painting that we're going to do. And obviously you're going to need brushes as well, and probably some paper towel to kind of wipe them on a little bit. But we're not going to do a whole lot of brush rinsing out. We're going to stick with kind of one brush for each color, really, just because we need different size brushes for this. So obviously the first thing that you're going to want to do is the background, and you're going to want to do it kind of a base coat of orange. And now that I did that ahead of time so that I can stay a little bit ahead of you guys, so you can pause and stop the video as needed when you're working on your canvas. So base coat of orange to start with, and then what we're going to want to do is put some red and yellow in here. We're going to mix kind of some red in with the orange and kind of tint the bottom corner of the canvas, sort of a red orange, dark red orange. We're going to try to tint this kind of upper corner of the canvas with some yellow orange, and then we're just going to kind of blend it in really well, and then we're going to put a bunch of kind of streaks across the canvas. It's going to make it look like it's that slightly feathery texture of the monarch's wings. So I'm going to set this kind of off to the side here, and I'm going to use one of my bigger brushes, because if I use a little brush, it's just going to take forever. And so I'm going to grab some orange and some yellow with the same brush, and then I'm going to start doing the corner up here. And you can see right away that it's already significantly lighter, which is good. I want it to be kind of a lighter shade. And so I'm going to kind of just buff this on with my brush. I'm doing sort of a diagonal motion. I just kind of like the way that looks on the canvas, to do it in a slightly diagonal pattern. And I'm just going to keep bringing it down. It's okay if it's a little bit streaky. That's what I want. I want them to blend, but yet not blend, if that makes any sense at all. We're going to see a progression from this sort of yellow-orange down to like a red-orange, and that's going to be relatively blended. But across each section, you're still going to see the sort of, I don't know what to call it, just the sort of streakiness of it all. That's a little bit too much yellow there, so I'm going to add some orange back into it to kind of buff that out a little bit, because that was a little bit too orange for my taste. I think I'll put a little bit more yellow up here at this corner though. And because I've got both colors on my brush, the more I rub, the more it's going to blend it in. So I don't want to go too gung-ho, because otherwise I'll completely buff out any of the nice little streaks that I've kind of made in there. Because you can kind of see, let me pull the original back up here. It's just sort of, it's fading from light to dark, and yet you can still see the streaks that are in the painting. I'm transitioning mostly to just orange now as I move across the canvas, because I want it to fade from the yellowy orange to just regular orange to dark orange. So I like the way that looks. Now I'm gonna switch and do the opposite corner down here at the bottom. And I'm going to do it with the red. So I'm going to start with the red. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not rinsing out my brush, because I just don't want my brush to get all wet. So I'm going to grab some red. I'm going to grab some orange together at the same time. And then I'm going to start doing the same thing down at this corner. And that's really red to start with, so I'll probably buff some of that out, because that's very, very red. But all I got to do is grab a little bit of orange, and I can put the orange back in there, and it'll take out some of that red. won't be as red as I originally had that there. And as you can see, it's starting to, but I want a little bit more red across the bottom here. There's some more red in there. And you can do little patches of color as well. Like if I were to just grab just red and just kind of swipe it a little bit across the canvas, I get kind of a streaky quality there. And then I can go back and grab some orange and kind of go over top of it, and that tones it down just enough that it doesn't completely stand out like this big crazy stripe of red going across my canvas. I'm actually painting on poster board because I don't want to waste a bunch of canvases. I did my original on canvas. This one is actually this is a canvas panel, actually, not a full-on canvas, because this is what I happen to have. But I didn't want to waste a complete canvas to do an second one here, so I'm doing it on just a piece of poster board that I had at the house here while we're all kind of stuck at home. And I can do the same thing that I did with the red in yellow. I can do a couple strokes of yellow across the canvas in here and there, which will also add a little bit of interest. Now a lot of this is going to get covered over with the different parts of the butterfly that we're going to have, but that's okay because it still helps us have a really interesting background. And I'm rubbing it pretty well. It's probably hard to tell on the video, but I'm rubbing most of the paint off of my brush because I don't want to end up with too much paint on here because it's going to take forever for it to dry, and I'd have to wait in between putting on my next couple layers of paint. I'm kind of dipping a little yellow at this point and buffing out. That was a little bit too much yellow. I think I want a little more red in a few spots. I like that the butterfly is going to kind of change color. Different sections of its wings are going to be different colors. But they have sort of a feathery texture if you've ever looked at a butterfly. I'm guessing most of you probably have seen a butterfly up close. But they have a very feathery texture to their wings. And so we're trying to mimic that in what we're doing here. I'll put a little bit of red up at the top with the yellow, but not a ton. I don't want it to be like a huge swath of red up there, but a little bit. It's nothing to sneeze at. It just makes it look like there's a shadow or something on it. And I'll do the same thing. I'll do a little bit of yellow down here in the red, just to add interest. Anywhere that I think there's too much red, I just tone it down with a little orange. Even a little bit of yellow can tone it down if I'm up in the top in the yellow section. You can just fiddle with it until you like the way it looks. This is your painting. You don't have to make it look exactly like my painting. There we go. I think I like the way that looks. And I'm not going to use this brush again, so I'm actually just going to toss it in my cup of water over here because I don't need that brush again. I'm going to switch to a different brush because next I'm going to start doing the black lines. Now, I'm going to use this brush for the black lines. It's sort of a round brush. It's falling apart a little bit, but these are the brushes I have at home, so that's what we're going to use. So I need to start putting on the black lines. And if you really look at it, it kind of reminds you maybe a little bit of stained glass in a way. And at first I was a little scared of the lines, but it turns out it's actually really not all that hard to do the lines if you just kind of picture what the shape you're going for to begin with is. So we have a curve that's going from kind of, it's about 2/3 down the canvas, and then it sweeps up to about halfway across the canvas, and then it sweeps back down. So I have sort of the curve of one butterfly wing here, and then I have the curve of another wing that just kind of, you can just barely tell it's there because it goes off the page. But you can tell which direction the wing is going just because of these other curves that are going on the page. So we're just going to grab our black and we're going to start kind of outlining the section here. So I'm going to grab some black paint on my brush, and here's hoping that this sticks a little better on my brush and my brush doesn't go crazy. So I'm going to start about 2/3 of the way down, and I'm just going to make a big sweeping curve with my brush. It's okay if it's not perfectly straight or outlined, because I can go back in and darken it. So that's going to be the main part of my curve. So now I can go in and sort of thicken up these lines. Watch your finger, keep it out of the paint. And this is where the fact that I was putting the paint on very thin in the background, I was rubbing my brush so that it would get mostly out of my brush, because it's mostly dry. I can touch this now. It's only been a couple minutes since we stopped painting the background, but I can touch it. I'm not getting paint all over me. It's pretty dry. So connect this here. And you want it nice and thick and deep and black. You don't want any of the paint peeking through. So I've got a curve going there. And my other curve is going to kind of go from here like that. Now let's look at the original again. There's a thicker section of black at the top curve of the wing here and here. So I'm going to outline that right now. So on this one, the curve, for the most part, is going to go like that. I'm going to outline it, and then I'm going to fill it in. Oh dear, I've gotten a text. I'm filming this on my phone, so if you heard that ding, I'm either gotten an email or a text while I'm painting this. Let's connect this right here, and then I can fill it in. And again, I want it filled in nice and thick. I don't want any little bits of the orange showing through. I want it to be nice and dark. This is a very bold, graphic sort of painting. Originally, I was a little scared to do this one because I was like, oh boy, that looks pretty detailed. I don't know if I can quite do that. But the closer I looked at it, the more I realized it was just kind of small sections, small little shapes. And if you can do little shapes and lines, it's actually not that bad. When we break it down, a lot of drawings and paintings are really not as bad as hard as you think they are once you kind of break them down into their component parts. So I need kind of a wide little curve here at the tip of this wing. And I'm actually going to make it go kind of off the edge here. In this instance, I am painting off the side of my poster board because I have a drop cloth, a little paper down behind this that I don't accidentally paint on my table. Don't want to do that. I ruin enough tables with painting. I don't need to ruin another one. So I'm going to clean up my line here. Make that look nice and even. And then I'm going to fill in the main part of this. I'm loading a pretty good amount of paint on my brush. Because I don't want to have to keep reloading it. And if you look at this one, there's also a small section of black kind of right there, a little triangle. So I'm going to add a little sort of triangle shape of black right in here with my brush. I don't know if you can see on the video, I've got a couple really loose bristles on here that if I'm not holding the brush the right way, they kind of stick out and make funny little patterns. All right, I like the way that looks. I'm going to start adding, before I finish painting this in, I want to start showing you how to add in the lines that we're going to have on our painting. And so obviously there's going to be one right here. If you look at this one, there's obviously one that comes down right here. And then and then I'll go back up and start at the top. But this one's an easy one to do right here. I can take this line and curve it down. And make it nice and dark on the edge. So let's do some lines up here at the top. Okay, you're basically just making, just think of it like a stained glass. So I can do, I'll do a little line right here. And I'll do another one right next to it, curving it down to meet the top. I'm running out of paint a little bit there on the edge. Clean that up a bit. And if it's a little lumpy in spots, that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything if it has a slightly thicker line in a couple spots. And let's do a big sweeping one from up here. We'll connect that in there. Nice big sweeping black line. Luckily, there's not a lot of straight lines on this painting. If you've ever been in any of my classes at South Haven or Portage or Hebron, you'll know that I'm really bad at straight lines. I'm going to put another line in here, but I'm going to connect it to that line, just for a little visual interest. If we make all of our lines go to the same spot, it's going to look a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Man-made as opposed to natural. And I'm going to actually take a line like this and do that to give it a little bit of visual interest. I think that looks nice. And let's do another big sweeping one up here. We'll sweep it down to there. You'll notice that my lines get a little messy because I'm very lightly touching the canvas. And that's just to give me kind of a basic line, and then I can go back in and I can darken up and fill in the rest of the line as I go. And I think I'll put, I liked this pattern in the original. There was sort of like this kind of funny triangular pattern there, so I'm going to duplicate that because I really did like that in the original one that I saw. So it sort of came down and then it sort of went back up, and then that'll tell me where to put the next set of lines that I want, because we took a line from here to here, and we took a line from here, trail it off. We'll do another one kind of right there. I like that. That looks good. Now we'll go down here to the bottom. This one kind of has a fun shape right here. It's almost like a leaf shape, I would say. I'm going to do that shape first because then I can connect all the other lines to that one. And again, you can make this any way that you want to, really. It doesn't matter. After all, no two butterflies look identical. So I'm going to connect that line up there. And I'm going to, when I go down on this side, I'm going to connect it like that. That's where I'm going to do that line. In fact, I'll do a couple of these lines really quickly here. I'm going to have one, oh, probably right there. I'll have one, let's see, right there. And we'll do kind of a wiggly one right inside of that part of the wing. And we'll do one like that, and one there like that. Now I'm going to turn the camera off as I go in and I kind of darken in and kind of tweak all my lines. And then you can kind of pause the video and restart as needed. And I'll fill this in and then I'll show you how to do the white parts on there. Okay, through the magic of video editing, I've gone ahead and sort of filled in my lines. I've colored in this area of the tip of the wing here. I've kind of neatened everything up, and we'll move on to the next step. There is one, before we paint the white spots on, there's one other little thing that we're doing. And I did it up here at the top, but I'll do a couple here at the bottom. If you can kind of see, I've rounded off the edges of where the black meets the orange. I've sort of curved it because it used to be like this, where it was just a very straight line connecting these black lines in here, and I want to round it off a little bit. It makes it just a little bit softer, and so I've left a few to demonstrate. And so literally I'm just kind of going in with my brush and rounding off the corners of where the black lines, the sort of stained glass window panes of the butterfly's wings are, to the black spots on the tips, and fill it in there. So I just have a few down here at the bottom to finish up on. And it's a really easy, very simple little step that just really makes a huge difference in how the final product turns out. Be very slow and careful with your brush to make sure that it's a nice gentle curve and not kind of a rough jagged curve. It's just really kind of makes it a little bit more natural, a little bit more dainty, maybe a little more elegant. It's less harsh to look at for sure when you see all these nice little edges kind of rounded off. There we go. So now I'm done with my black, unless there's a couple spots where maybe I see some of the orange peeking through. If you are working on a canvas, like my original here is on a canvas, I did paint the sides of it. This is a panel, so it's not very thick. If you had like an actual thick canvas, you probably would want to paint the sides, because unless you're going to frame it, if you were to just prop it up on a shelf, you would see the sides and the edges of it. So I'm done with my black and my background, and now I just need to add these little white spots. And you'll notice that they're bigger kind of towards the base, and they get kind of smaller as they go out. And they're very random spots too. Like, they're not any specific shape. Some of them are kind of squarish, some of them are kind of triangular, some of them are big, some of them are small. And they're just kind of fit together, kind of like cobblestones or like a jigsaw. And I'm just going to use like a medium-sized brush. This was a round brush at one point, but it's getting kind of flat. My brushes are a little messy. And I'm just going to use the white, and I'm just going to kind of randomly start painting here I'm going to start at the top, since I'm right-handed, it's handy that it's on this side. If you're left-handed, you might want to actually reverse your painting and have the curves going a different way so that your black is on this side. But visually, it looks nice to have the black on this side. But again, if you're left-handed, you could switch the directionality of your painting just to make it easier for you as you go to paint. So I'm just going to start putting in some kind of random squares and triangles and just some sort of odd shapes. It makes me think a little bit of a giraffe, the way the spots kind of work here. And so I'm just going to kind of go through and do different shapes. I'm getting quite a bit of paint on my brush because I don't want to suddenly run out. Having lots of paint kind of helps in this instance. And I'm just going to kind of go through. Hopefully, you do want to make sure that your black is dry before you start to do this, or you're going to end up with gray spots, which we don't want. So definitely make sure that your black is dry before you start to do any of these white spots, or you're going to have a bit of a mess on your hands. You do want a relatively tidy brush. This brush has some bristles kind of sticking out everywhere, which make this a little bit more difficult than it probably should be, simply because I got to be careful with that the bristles don't kind of start sticking themselves in weird places and leaving funny little marks on my painting. I don't want to do that. But right now we're just going through and we're going to paint in lots of different shapes. Mostly square shapes. But you'll notice I'm not being super picky about how I go about putting them on. I'm just kind of randomly sticking them in there. Now don't cross over this line right here. This line right here is where this wing is crossing over that wing. You don't want to accidentally bring your white down too far. That'll mess with kind of the depth of it. It'll just make your wings look kind of weird. I always find painting to be very therapeutic. You just kind of sit. I do it a lot while I watch television. You just kind of sit and paint. If it's not something that's super complicated. Something like this at this stage too, it's very repetitive. Probably the most stressful part of this particular painting is doing all the lines and trying to get them to look the way you want them to look. It's probably a lot less stressful. It's a lot less stressful to sit and just kind of paint little funny shapes. And it's definitely okay if they have slightly jagged edges. That just adds to the sort of feathery effect. Because it's the butterfly, and butterflies have those little feathery wings. I'll do some over here. So take your time, relax, go through and paint the little shapes. And through the magic of video editing, when I turn this back on in just a second, I'll be most of the way done, and I'll show you how to do some of the slightly smaller white spots. So now you can see that I've gone in and I finished my white spots, and I started doing some smaller little white spots, just kind of in a couple areas, because I want an assorted size of spots. So I've kind of got this part of the wing done. I'm going to work on this part of the wing down here. You'll notice I've switched to a very small brush, and I'm just going to go in, I'm just going in and adding small little spots here and there. Try not to make them too uniform. That cuts down on some of the natural looking quality of it if you start to make them all the same size and all the same shape. Or if you try to end up putting them in some sort of a pattern, you don't want to do any kind of a particular pattern, or that might make it look a little funky. You want it to be very natural. So I add in these small spots. The trick is not to overdo it. It's very easy to kind of go a little gung-ho and add too many of a certain thing to a painting. Less is more, especially in this case. I think I want to add some kind of, maybe some almost roundish spots in some areas. In some areas maybe that I left blank, maybe I do want a larger spot there. It just depends. Use your imagination. There's not really a wrong way to do this. The only way that might look a little weird is if you started putting them a little too close together. You want to make sure that you leave plenty of that black space in between your spots so that you can see it better. You don't want to get them so close together that you start taking up all of that black space in between. I'm almost running out of white paint, so it's a good thing that I'm almost finished with my spots. I'm going to carry them right down off the very edge of my painting. I'll put a big one kind of right there near the bottom. That looks good. Clean up a couple of my edges here. And there I have my monarch butterfly painting. It's a very abstract painting, but almost anybody who knows butterflies can recognize this pattern, so you would know, oh, that's a monarch butterfly. And of course, the very last thing that you ever do on a painting is sign your name. So I'm going to sign my name here at the bottom. I rinsed out my teeny tiny white brush that I could grab a little bit of black, and I'm just going to sign my name at the bottom of my painting. You can put a date on it too if you want. But there we go. There's our monarch butterfly coffee and canvas. I hope you guys enjoyed our program today, and follow us on our YouTube channel, and we'll have lots more virtual programming for you guys. Have a great day. Bye.